Dear partners, members, and colleagues, greetings again from Athens. Sorry, we had a technical hitch-up. Now I understand this has been restored. It was not our system, it was a general breakdown. So hopefully we're now on the right footing and we continue. I will just go very briefly of what I've said. It is a great opportunity to be around the table today. Gas is at the center of the energy debate right now, and the effort by European Union to lower gas emissions by 2030 according to revised and more ambitious targets. Yet, there are certain quarters in the EU and more broadly that they don't want to include gas in the new energy mix. Myself and as an institute, we think that this is not the right approach. We think that gas is not an evil fuel, as some people try to portray it, and should not be included in such lists which prohibit certain fuel like gas. We all know the attributes of natural gas. We know it's a benign fuel. And over the last 30 years, a lot of effort and a lot of investment has taken place in our region to bring gas into the mainstream of the energy equilibrium, into the energy mix. And in some countries have, to a large extent, succeeded. So today, gas covers something like 20-25% of many countries' energy mix, and in some cases, it goes up to 40-45% of the electricity mix. So gas is an inseparable component of the energy mix. So our idea is to discuss around the table, like the table we have today, and we're very fortunate to have about 25 speakers from 12 different countries and organizations today around the table to discuss this issue. Our proposal is to include gas in the discussion. Of course, we have to move into stricter emission standards, into more stringent rules, agreed, but gas is part of the equation. And it's for a simple reason in our part of the world, as you will hear from other speakers later today, is that this is the quickest way to decarbonization. We cannot demand decarbonization, a phasing out of solid fuels here without moving to gas. I mean, you cannot go from phasing out fuels directly into renewables and to hydrogen. I think there is a way, and if there is a will, there is a way, as they say, and I think all around the table think likewise. But we're fortunate today to have among us speakers from various top-level government and non-government organizations and companies. I shall waste no more time, but to invite Mrs. Marius Spyraki, who is a member of the European Parliament, and most importantly, she's a member of the Committee on Industry, Research and Energy, and she's very well versed into this subject and the discussion and the problems surrounding it. I had the opportunity to share with her a similar platform in January 2020 in Brussels on this very issue, and with the participation of Eurogas at the time. So I think how valuable and important her contribution is going to be. Maria Spyraki, you have the floor.
First of all, thank you very much for having me in this high-profile event in order to exchange views for the future of the energy mix in our region, and particularly for the role of gas. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Marius Chakas. I'm serving for a second mandate in the European Parliament. I was elected in 2014 and also was re-elected in 2019 with direct vote from from Greece. And I'm also serving as a co-chair on the biggest and more influential intergroup here in Brussels, which is the intergroup concerning climate change and sustainable development. And I'm also the rapporteur on methane strategy on behalf of the European Parliament. So once again, thank you very much, because I think that it is important to start touching the issue of the role of gas under the new reality. And according to my opinion, I would like to focus on 4 aspects which I think that they are of paramount importance. The first one aspect is the time. How shall we manage the role of gas until 2030? The second is infrastructure. The third is technology for smooth and fast transition. And of course, the fourth, but not last, is the future-oriented investments. Natural gas, as we all know, is accepted as a transitional fuel in our Green Deal in order to meet the 2030 targets. Switching from coal to gas in the power sector is the easiest way to reduce emissions at scale at a very short term. We have regions in transition in Greece, which is Western Macedonia and also the city of Megalopolis. And also we have regions in Bulgaria and Romania, which are included in this huge transformation, and they are part of the so-called regions in transition under the EU provision and legislation. Gas is one of the ways also for smooth transition based on the conclusion of the European Council last December, which has explicitly said that it is a transitional fuel. It is also a transitional fuel to green industry, provided that we have to use the existing technologies, which is carbon capture storage and also carbon capture use, in order to have a low carbon hydrogen from gas. Accelerating the transition of energy-intensive basic materials industries to climate neutrality is becoming, according to my opinion, an increasingly urgent matter. And by saying this, my first point is that we have to bridge the gap between our ambitions and reality for fossil fuels and gas, and at the same time to provide affordable energy in the market and to our citizens and industry, of course. Natural gas is a transitional fuel, and we have to utilize it as such in order to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and in order to succeed a zero carbon energy mix by 2050. Of course, it is, allow me to say, an approach which is short and mid-term, and the case is how fast can we enable future-oriented paths and projects in order to decarbonize our energy mix. And in this regard, it is of paramount importance to develop and implement a coherent and concrete European strategy for hydrogen, as hydrogen has the high potential of a clean energy source for the future, and it is considered as a key enabler of energy system integration and the linking of the electricity and gas sectors. The EU hydrogen strategy sets very ambitious goals, sets the objective of reaching 6 gigawatts of renewable hydrogen production. It is the green hydrogen by 2024, and the 2030 target of 40 gigawatts. Hydrogen is set to play a very important role in meeting the EU's energy and climate targets for 2030 and achieving climate neutrality by 2050. However, in the 2030 target plan impact assessment, the Commission only foresees 11 to 12 gigawatts of renewable hydrogen production. Probably it is obvious that it is not enough. As we all agree that the milestone of 2040, first of all, is tomorrow, green hydrogen is the priority, but we have also to produce low carbon hydrogen in order to transform our energy mix. Therefore, we need gas. We need sufficient candidates of low carbon hydrogen, and in this framework to support the development and deployment of carbon capture and utilization and storage technologies, as I have already mentioned, without compromises on the issues of safety and security that this kind of infrastructure are raising, and there are a lot of concerns when it comes to the citizens and to the sensitivity they raise. When it comes to the update of EU legislation, I would like to say a few words on the proposal of the updated of IENE regulation. The objective of the future of IENE is to support the implementation of the European Green Deal through the decarbonization of energy. We have to avoid study assets. It's also to facilitate our member states to encourage hydrogen-ready investments for a smooth transition into zero carbon energy mix. According to my approach and according to my job here in the Parliament, the first step we have to proceed is to upgrade the existing gas infrastructures. Hydrogen production could take place on site, close to where it is used. However, it is not always the most efficient supply option. For instance, in cases where hydrogen consumers are located away from large supply of renewable electricity or CCH location and have access to existing gas grids, it will be cost effective to receive hydrogen through gas grids. Existing gas infrastructure can be used with some modification to safely transport hydrogen. In addition, the connection to a hydrogen network increases security of supply significantly. Pipeline transport is far cheaper compared to hydrogen transport via shipping. However, the latter could become relevant for very long distance transport of hydrogen. Pipeline transport of hydrogen can either take the form of blending shares of hydrogen with methane or can be dedicated hydrogen transport. As the rapporteur under my capacity as the rapporteur of methane, of the strategy of the European Union for reducing methane emission in the planet, I fully support the creation of business cases for the agriculture and for the waste management sector in order to increase the reduction of methane in the planet by producing biomethane, which is very important and which could be blended with gas. Going back to hydrogen, blending makes sense when hydrogen volumes are small. When hydrogen volumes increase while transported volumes of natural gas decrease, dedicated hydrogen transport will emerge, initially connected industrial clusters and later connecting regional and national hydrogen infrastructure. At the same time, we have to build additional infrastructure where it's needed by investing on a basis of integrated EU plan and also following the criteria of taxonomy and, as you have already mentioned, the EIB new leading policy. Which means that the vision of a truly European undertaking connecting hydrogen supply and demand from north to south and west to east should be developed. This leads to an initial 6,800 kilometer pipeline network by 2030, connecting hydrogen valleys. The planning for this first phase should start as soon as possible due to our commitments that we have to smoothly replace gas with hydrogen and to smoothly decarbonize gas. In order to have proper technology and infrastructure, it is also important to provide adequate funding for research and innovation. And it is important to take into account the national plans concerning the hydrogen strategy and also the hydrogen strategy when it comes to EU level. As underlined in the German national hydrogen strategy, which I think it is the most important and I think it is the most coherent, a reliable, affordable and sustainable ways of producing hydrogen are essential for its future use. Now it is the time to construct demonstration plants, and it is important to have them in industrial scale and scale this up further to ensure that the cost of hydrogen production decreases considerably. In addition, the German national hydrogen strategy concludes that the current framework does not allow hydrogen to be generated and used in an economically viable manner. That's why fossil fuels in particular continue to be much cheaper. And in order for hydrogen to become economically viable, we need to continue to bring down the price of hydrogen technology and also using low carbon hydrogen. This is for me the case, and I think that the key wording in this regard is complementarity. In order to drive forward technological progress in the economies of scale and promptly obtain the critical mass of hydrogen, which is the fuel of the future, needed some initial sectors to switch to the new technology. The production and use of hydrogen needs to be sped up globally, and it is important to create, as far as we can, a global level playing field in terms of decarbonization. And that's why the comeback of the US and the Biden's commitments in terms of implementing the Paris Agreement is of paramount importance. In this regard, I think it's time to develop a coherent and complementary hydrogen strategy for the Eastern Europe, taking into account the significant role of gas in production of low-carbon hydrogen, the infrastructure needed, and above all, the way we should address our decarbonization targets, providing affordable energy prices and security of supply to the market. Once again, thank you very much for the invite, and I'm at your disposal for any further questions.
Thank you very much, Maria Spyraki, for a very concise, easy to understand, and I would dare say friendly approach. So we're indeed grateful for your contribution, which really adds to the subject matter of our discussion. And hopefully you can send me this in written form so we can upload this on the microsite, because I think it's very, very useful statement and could guide us along this difficult path. Okay, so it now gives me great pleasure to welcome Greece's energy regulator, Dr. Athanasios Dagoumas. Mr. Dagoumas, can you hear me?
Yes, hello,
Right,
Mr. Stambolis, I can hear you.
Okay, so you have the floor, you have share screen, so you can go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stambolis, for the invitation. It's my great pleasure to contribute to this very important event. So my presentation concerns the role of the Hellenic gas market and infrastructure in Southeast Europe. It's a presentation of about 10 slides. So first of all, please allow me to provide some basic information about the Hellenic natural gas transmission system that is known, at least in the area from the experts. So we have one LNG terminal and 3 entry points. We have 43 exit points. We have the capability for reserve flow from Greece to Bulgaria over the last years. Of course, we follow all the European legislation concerning third-party access, the entry-exit model, and we have a virtual trading point where trains, transactions take place. One important issue is that now have under construction LNG bunkering facilities in the LNG terminal. So we will have soon the possibility of transferring LNG within our territory. And concerning the capacity and infrastructure, the total technical capacity is about 11.5 billion BCMs, while the demand is about 6 BCMs per year. So somebody would argue that there is enough capacity, but if you go to the next slide, which is a slide from Acer concerning the health of the markets, we have two indicators here, the HHI on the horizontal axis and the RSI on the vertical axis. Those axes reflect to the market concentration on one side and on the importance of one major supplier, Gazprom, for our region. As you can see, for Greece, in 2016, the situation concerning market concentration was not the most welcome, but compared to other Balkan countries, especially with Bulgaria, we are at a much better position. But over the last years, for 2017, 18, and 19, this has been considerably improved, basically because of the competitiveness of the LNG. So practically we have a lot of competition now in the Hellenic electricity market. But as you can see, we are marginally above the RSI indicator because we still have some dependence on imports from Gazprom as well as other countries in the area. In this slide, you can see the effect evaluation of the less mature markets in Europe. The effect is the European Federation of Energy Traders. While we can see that we have made considerable progress in the Hellenic electricity markets. So we are a more mature market now. The main drawback that we have is the absence of an organized trading platform, but this is to be tackled within 2021 with great cooperation we have with Hellenic Energy Exchange that is planned to start a trading platform for gas in the next semester. This graph shows the price volatility. It's obvious here that the gas has a high volatility. It's clear that especially in mid-June we have very considerably low prices because of the LNG and because of the COVID-19 outbreak. But now there is an increase in the trend. So practically now we have prices which is similar to the prices that we have before 2019. So that's why we have an increase in the wholesale markets, both for gas as well as for electricity, which together with increasing CO2 prices, we have also a considerable increase in the wholesale electricity markets. The electricity dynamics, the gas price dynamics affect, of course, the flows. Here you can see that we have a stable imports from Kipi, which is from Turkey, which is let's say it's based on long-term contracts, but you can see the shift between the pipeline gas, let's say from Gazprom and the LNG gas, which depends on these price dynamics that we showed before. It's also important to mention that we have, since 2021, started the commercial operation of TAP, which practically replaced the gas that was coming before from Kipi. So practically this remains almost the same. So have a great competition between pipeline gas and LNG gas, depending on the price dynamics, which leads also to some contracts from a pipeline to be linked to a TTF or other indicators. So we're moving to more gas linkage markets rather than oil linkage markets. This slide shows the expectation of the demand in Greece over the next years. So practically VESFA, the TSO, gas TSO, and ANME, the electricity TSO, have small discrepancies. So the gas in Greece is not expected to increase considerably. There's an expectation for increasing about some 1 BCM over the next years. But there is a potential infrastructure for new gas CCD units. About 2 gigawatt is expected according to the National Climate and Energy Plan. But we are expecting some penetration, especially within the cities, because of the penetration in some areas in the DSOs that did not take place in the past. As you can see here, this is the approved investments by the regulator from the Hellenic gas networks, TSOs and DSOs. You can see they have a plan of about 1 billion euros. Half of them concern the TSO and the other concern the DSOs. So practically the main question that also Mr. Stambolis raised is that the gas in the east part of Europe, including Greece, has not been extended to the whole territory. That's why we still have some developments in our area, and practically gas infrastructure is being extended to most of the major cities in Greece over the next years. As you can also see, there is a strong interest for new infrastructure in Greece, for saying pipelines, TAP and IGB are already there or very mature to take place. We have the infrastructure with North Macedonia and as well as potential with East Med. We have two potential LNG FSRU terminals, Alexandroupolis and Diorica gas, the gas storage in South Kavala, as well as the LNG bunkering in ITRE, which is already under construction. Somebody will argue, is there a place, is there a market for all this infrastructure? Practically, the market for all this infrastructure comes from the fact that we are now integrated in the area as we are moving towards adopting the European target model. So practically, all this new infrastructure have a place within integrated Southeast Europe. So IGB, IGN, GNM, potentially Ionian Adriatic pipeline and vertical gas corridor give a place for all this infrastructure, and this comes from a very important signal that I want to mention, that for the first time we have a firm capacity bundled reverse flow from Greece to Bulgaria and Romania. So we are now potentially using our infrastructure towards different direction, not coming from Russia, Ukraine to Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece, but opposite. So the existing infrastructure can play a different role depending on the price dynamics of LNG. So we can bring exporters of LNG to the most of Southeast Europe countries. And on two last slides concerning the gas market developments in Greece. As I mentioned before, we plan to operate a wholesale gas market in Greece. Practically, this will integrate two transactions, type of transactions that take place. One is in a virtual trading point that is bilateral transaction without any price signal. So it's just volumes. And the transactions at the balancing platform, which is regulated at the regulated prices. So those transactions will be integrated in a trading platform that will provide a daily price signal So we consider that this will be an important change in area and probably will affect also transactions in Southeast Europe. But as also Ms. Spyraki mentioned, we have all these concerns and all this development to be careful, to be very well designed, and that's why we consider all the developments within the EU long-term plan debate. We know the public consultation about hydrogen, decarbonizing EU gas markets, so all the new gas developments in Greece have to take place in alliance, in compliance with what's happening in Europe about hydrogen and how those infrastructure in the area can be used for both purposes as complementary or as blended fuels in the future. Thanks for the invitation and for your interest in my presentation.
Thank you so much, Dr. Dagoumas, for informing us on the importance of gas in the Greek energy system, especially the infrastructures and the policy aspects you highlighted. I think we now have a much better understanding of how gas is part of this ever-growing system and the importance it plays. So I will now go to the other side of the Atlantic, and it gives me a great pleasure to welcome William Polen. William Polen is a senior director of the United States Energy Association. This is a non-profit association which brings together more than 100 US companies with interest across the entire energy sector. But these companies are very interested in working outside the United States, and this is where William Polen and his colleagues with Association of USAID have been helpful for many years, consistent efforts over the last 15, 20 years, which I think have started bringing some results. But William, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Stambolis. It's indeed a pleasure to join you and such a distinguished panel this morning. I've had the pleasure of working with you over the last several years and followed your work, and I really appreciate all the work that the Institute has done to support the energy transition and energy security in Southeast Europe. As you mentioned, it's been my real pleasure to have worked in the region now for almost 30 years, promoting energy security and now more recently the clean energy transition throughout the region. I hope you can see my screen. You're seeing it okay? Okay, thank you. The United States Energy Association is a nonprofit membership association headquartered in Washington, D.C. We've had the distinct pleasure of working with the U.S. Agency for International Development over these past many years to support improved energy security in Southeast Europe and now more recently the energy transition. The program that I've had the pleasure of operating and managing for these many years is called the Energy Technology and Governance Program. And it has largely six program components. I'm going to focus on two of them. One is called the Electricity Market Initiative, which is designed to provide modeling and analytical support to create, to reduce the seams of electricity markets in Southeast Europe and promote wholesale electricity market trade. And the other one is called the Eastern Europe Natural Gas Partnership, which is designed also to provide a modeling and technical support to bring together the infrastructure needed to create deep, robust and liquid gas markets in Eastern Europe. Our Electricity Market Initiative recently completed an important study looking at the impact of the decarbonization policies that are now prevalent throughout Europe and in Southeast Europe, and found that the region, as we define it, and here we're talking about the Balkans Peninsula primarily, is the lignite capacity and coal capacity that it depends on is seriously threatened by higher CO2 emission tax. The introduction of renewable energy does not push out the lignite. In fact, we can have quite a bit of new renewable power generation capacity in the region without pushing it out. But CO2 taxes imposed on the countries that are not yet members of the European Union will force a rapid decarbonization of the sector. And this threatens energy security for those countries that don't have natural gas supply and haven't been able to, build renewable energy capacity at the same pace as maybe the others in as others in the European Union have. So we recognize from the very beginning that the gas sector is an important important to the transition, and gas can be an important transitional fuel. And we organized the Eastern European Natural Gas Partnership. This is a partnership of 12 TSOs and ministries that are examining the infrastructure needed to ensure that there's a stable and secure supply of natural gas, that there's a competitive natural gas market in Europe, and that security of supply can be maintained over the transition to renewable energy. So here you see the members. They range from, they connect the Mediterranean and Aegean seas, the Black Sea, and the Baltic Sea in a corridor running from north to south. The partnership has developed, I think, one of the most comprehensive and useful planning models for regional examination of gas. One of the first things we did was look at the gas demand from now until 2040. So this model that we've created is looking at gas infrastructure requirements from now until the planning horizon year 2040. And as you can see here, in this part of Europe, where gas has not penetrated greatly, with the exception of, say, Greece and some of the other European members, the non-European members lack gas infrastructure. So you can see that from a modeling perspective, where we want to look at the ability of the infrastructure to deliver gas at peak times, you can see here that we're going to experience, this region would experience, we forecast an increase in gas consumption because as lignite phases out, there needs to be a baseload capacity and a regulating capacity for renewable energy. And so we see here in countries where there is no gas infrastructure, gas is being introduced according to the national plans, and we've helped them refine these demand forecasts through our modeling exercises. And in countries where there is gas infrastructure, such as North Macedonia or Serbia, we see an increase in gas consumption, although on a small scale. There's a growing gas demand here, and in Poland as well. Based on the gas demand forecast and including the gas demand forecast, we developed a regional planning model. We call it the Max 2040 model. As I mentioned, it looks at the gas infrastructure requirements of the region from now until 2040 in 5-year increments over the next 20 years. And here you can see a simplified model of the hydraulic planning model that we've created in consultation with the 12 members of our team. Each member has executed an NDA, and they've elected to contribute their models, their national models of their gas networks to this regional initiative in an unexpected and pleasant ability to share information across national borders. Well, here you can see what we're projecting. The planned infrastructure is shown in magenta, or sort of light pink. The existing infrastructure is shown in black. And so while this is questionable in terms of whether this amount of infrastructure can actually be built, particularly in the current climate, this is what we had projected prior to sort of the change in philosophy toward gas. But we still see a lot of this infrastructure being necessary to create this north-south corridor and ensure a clean energy transition and a secure natural gas supply and a future hydrogen network in Southeast Europe. So the model that we've created has 148 supply nodes, 412 offtakes, 8,345 other nodes, and 4,400 elements. So it's a pretty comprehensive model. And we've used it to conduct the hydraulic analysis that I'll talk about in a couple of minutes. Inside of the model, we've created a GIS-based catalog of projects that are coming directly from the expansion plans of each of the 12 member countries. They've been vetted and verified by them. They include pipelines, interconnections, and compressor stations, underground gas storage facilities, and LNG terminals. So it's a pretty comprehensive list that of projects that build up this hydraulic model that have been verified and vetted as part of the model itself. And here you can see a list of about 50 of the projects, the most critical projects that are GIS based and cataloged in our model. These are, again, LNG import terminals, underground storage facilities, pipeline connections, important compressor stations. So as we talked about, and as the previous speakers mentioned, the region, the Southeast Europe, has a high dependence on lignite and fossil fuels. Carbon taxes will reduce the ability to provide baseload power from its fossil fuel base. And we see competitive, robust, and liquid gas markets as the solution and as an important enabler of the transition to clean energy. Without it, the region will be left with, honestly, with a very insecure ability to deliver power in particular. And it will threaten the ability to make the energy to the clean energy transition. One other thing I think that's important without gas is a question of whether the region will substitute one energy dependence for another. And here's a slide that I found in a presentation recently by an Irish consulting company that shows the potential inflow of renewable energy sources from Northern Europe to Southeast Europe based on a much more robust electric power transmission system. So here, you see that there is a potential for a large amount of renewable energies to come into Southeast Europe, which is fantastic. It enables a clean energy transition, but it threatens the energy security of the region because it makes it dependent on Northern Europe for clean energy and renewable energy. So are we really looking at substituting one form of energy dependence previously and now on natural gas for Northern European renewable energy in the future for this region? Or can we build a more energy secure future where we have natural gas in the region and we're using that as the bridge fuel and buy time for the region to build its own renewable energy capacity? So we have undertaken an important study looking at connecting the Mediterranean, Black, and Baltic seas along a north-south transmission corridor. And we've used our model to examine the potential for doing so. We've conducted an extensive hydraulic analysis of this corridor. It capitalizes on the new LNG terminal in Świnoujście, Poland, and it looks at connecting through infrastructure to the Kirk Island terminals, to Revitusa, and to Alexandroupolis. It optimizes the infrastructure needed to deliver gas hydraulically to make sure that it's technically sound. And it identifies, as we mentioned earlier, important project and interconnectors to create this north-south corridor. I'm not going to have time to go into all the details of the study, but you'll have my presentations. But what we're basically saying is that in the future, if this corridor were built, we could supply 65% of the forecasted demand by LNG and the connected infrastructure by 2040. This would give us the time to build out the renewable energy capacity needed for the clean energy transition. And there's no surprise here, but there are several important interconnection projects identified here that are essential to the establishment of this corridor. And I'll leave these slides with Mr. Stambolis, and you can have more time to look at the recommendations that are here. There are no surprises here in terms of the types of interconnections that are necessary. The last thing I want to leave you with is that as a complement to this hydraulic study that we've conducted, we are now in the process of organizing a market simulation model of the same infrastructure, with the intent that now that we've optimized hydraulic flows on this north-south corridor, we'll be able to look at the impacts of this corridor on transmission tariffs and gas prices. And so we'll have all 12 countries be able to sort of simulate what would it mean if we were able to establish this north-south corridor to both the hydraulic flows of gas and and the price of gas in the region. And all of this work can be applied and looked at for the future hydrogen scenarios that Mrs. Spyraki mentioned. And as part of our working group, we're beginning to do a series of workshops on the transition to hydrogen and sort of the questions of safety and metallurgy and pipelines, mixing of gases. So we're beginning at this, while we're looking at the hydraulic analysis, the market analysis of gas, we're also beginning to prepare the region for the transition to hydrogen. With that, I want to thank you, Mr. Stambolis, for this great opportunity to address your distinguished audience and members, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you very much, William, for an excellent presentation. I think you have managed to give us a very round idea of the importance of gas together with the other fuels, especially the hydrology part, which many people tend to underestimate, yet this is one of the mainstays of the region, as you well know. And of course, your very succinct observation that we should be careful not to replace one kind of dependency with another, meaning the free flows of green electricity from the north to the south and so forth. And you are correct, because already we see this in Greece's electricity mix. As we get more renewables into the electricity mix, we tend to get more inflows of electricity from other countries. And although for many years we were depending 5 to 8% for electricity flows, over the last 2 years, where we have a lignite phase out and more gas and more renewables, we see also greater imports of electricity. So you very rightly pointed out how delicate this balance is and how important it is to be able to predict. And thanks to the modeling work you have developed, I think you're in very good position, and we look forward working with your organization over the next years. So thank you once again for sharing this important view of the region. And now it gives me great pleasure to welcome the last speaker into this session, Dr. Marius Chakas, who is the head, he is the CEO of the Public Gas Distribution Network Company. This is the company which develops the regional gas grids in Greece. It's a very fast-moving and fast-developing company. So, Mr. Chakas, you have the floor.
First, I would like to thank the organizers for their invitation to the dialogue on the prospects and challenges of the gas market in Southeastern Europe. The role of natural gas in the transitional process of our country towards a new clean era is crucial. It comprises the bridge fuel to the decarbonization of our energy mixtures and the fuel that will lead us to renewable energy sources. The development of a strong gas infrastructure throughout the country is a necessity. This emblematic project has a decisive contribution to the sustainable development of the country and is being implemented by DEDA. With the investments exceeding 300 million by 2025 and $500 million by 2036, DEDA introduces natural gas to 34 cities in the country with multiple benefits for the entire society, the environment, the employment, and the real economy. We operate in the region of Eastern Macedonia and Thrace, Central Macedonia, Western Macedonia, Epirus, Central Greece, and Western Greece. These regions are inhabited by 30% of the total Greek population, that is more than 3 million people. In the context of this ambitious yet realistic 2021 to 2025 development program spread across 6 regions, a total of 2,000 kilometers of gas distribution networks will be constructed, and along with at least 70,000 consumer connections of all categories, households, commercial and industrial. These numbers refer to the minimum anticipated number of connections. However, based on the interest shown by households and businesses in the cities where construction works are already underway, new connections have been re-estimated to about 80,000 to 100,000, ultimately reaching about 200,000 by 2036. DEDA's development program is the largest distribution network expansion project currently implemented in Europe. At the same time, it is a unique infrastructure project for our country in terms of scope and implementation speed. The majority of the project will complete it within the next 2 years, which means by the end of 2023, contributing to the rapid and at the same time smooth and fair energy transition of our country. At this point, I would like to focus on the role of gas distribution networks for the next day. DEDA's project is a huge investment in natural gas infrastructure as new renewable gaseous fuels such as biomethane and hydrogen may now be distributed, thus existing minimal to zero carbon footprint. DEDA is the first operator in Greece proceeding greening its networks by upgrading them to biomethane and hydrogen ready. This means that our networks will be able to distribute biomethane and hydrogen as a mixture of ecological gas together with natural gas, further contributing to the penetration of renewable energy sources into the Greek energy system. In collaboration with the Center of Renewable Sources and Energy Saving, we have already completed a particularly important study identifying the biomethane production potential either from livestock or from feedstock in the areas where DEDA plans to develop natural gas infrastructures. I am delighted to share with you that the first results of this study are extremely encouraging. In the region of Eastern Macedonia and Thrace, where DEDA already owns and will further build distribution networks in 6 cities, according to the most pessimistic scenario, the estimated quantities of biomethane production will cover almost 30% of the projected consumptions in 2025 and 50% to the projected consumptions in 2043. As you can see, this is a very important investment that will offer great social, environmental, but also economic benefits for our country. This study, the first ever recorded in Greece, identifies the biomethane production potential in our country and provides DEDA with the necessary tool to geographically determine the investments required in order to be ready to inject biomethane into the network. Additionally, apart from biomethane, DEDA has already taken initiatives regarding the prospect of distributing hydrogen through its network. In this context, in the forthcoming period, we expect the results of 2 important studies indicating, first, the maximum hydrogen percent that will safely distribute it through the existing networks without having to convert indoor facilities, and second, the construction specification of the new networks in order to be able in the future to distribute hydrogen both as a mixture with natural gas as well as the only fuel. At the same time, an innovative project is about to be launched for the first time in our country. A pilot project in a small settlement in northern Greece will be carried out through which we will conceptually approach hydrogen distribution for urban use. This action results in 2 major achievements. First, ensuring the compatibility of the company infrastructure with the guidelines of the European Green Agreement and the National Energy and Climate Plan, and second, maximizing our network value for the benefits of our consumers. Innovation is at the heart of DEDA development strategy. I will mention two new innovative actions currently being implemented by utilizing state-of-the-art technologies. First, we follow a pioneering commercial policy with digital mapping of all potential industrial and commercial consumers in the region of operation. In this context, we create a database consisting of 4,000 industries and 11,000 commercial enterprises located near the existing or future DEDA networks, and we will have already established procedures addressing their connections. At the same time, we conduct targeted marketing campaigns for households. Second, we deployed integrated information systems in order to upgrade the services provided to our customers. Our vision of delivering natural gas all over Greece is on the brink of becoming a reality. DEDA's great projects have already commenced, contributing to the prosperity of society, the transition of our country to a climate-neutral economy, but also to a sustainable and socially just strong development. Thank you for your attention.
We wish to thank Dr. Tsakas for his contribution. We see how a company which is fully involved in the development of a regional network in different urban areas in Greece is having hydrogen right in the middle of its agenda and trying to develop a strategy of how to introduce hydrogen and try to go a step further, a step ahead to comply with the new requirements. So we have a few minutes in our disposal for a discussion, and I would like to turn to Maria Spyraki and ask her, now that she has seen some of the aspects, the actual issues which occupy industry and policymakers in the region, what are your thoughts on the next steps that need to be taken at EU level, strategy level?
Implementation level, because you have already characterized my intervention as a friendly one. I insist that it was a very realistic one, because I think that we have to consider two very important parameters by doing policy. The first one is the matter of time. And in this regard, I think that we have a very narrow window of time in order to proceed with further gas infrastructure. And I would like to thank Mr. Tsakas for his work on the local infrastructure, and I'm quite sure that he's taking into account and consideration that the only EU funding that he has available for the plans is the MFF and nothing else. So it is important to continue and conclude the local gas infrastructure as fast as possible. And the second one is the way that how can we proceed with more important infrastructure when it comes to interstate infrastructures, when it comes to important projects of common interest. As you all know, in the EU, we will proceed with changing the criteria of important projects of common interest, and these new criteria will not include gas. So it is important to understand that we have to facilitate the existing plans in order to conclude. And by saying this, I would like to mention namely the FSRU in Alexandroupolis and the storage in Kavala. So these two aspects are looking finally to the bankability of the projects that we have now in our plans. And according to my opinion, these kind of projects are not bankable if they will proceed with something very, very new and something that will adapt the new approach of gases, which is hydrogen and biomethane. So by taking into account our needs and by taking into account the stability of the market and also the issues of the security of supply, we have to update our plans in order to have hydrogen-ready infrastructures. Hydrogen-ready infrastructure everywhere. Hydrogen-ready infrastructure in a local level, and also hydrogen-ready infrastructure in a national, EU, and wider regional level. And this is my point. My point is that we need to work fast. My point is that we need to conclude fast. And my point is to have a forward-looking in terms of infrastructure. We have to use gas, but also taking into account that we have to use gas until 2030 as a transition fuel, and we have also to use gas after 2030 by transforming it into a low-carbon hydrogen.
Okay, thank you. I will now go to Dr. Dagoumas. Would you like to comment on this?
Yes, I think the comment from Ms. Spyraki was very clear. And this is that some of the regular concerns we plan to have a study on hydrogen. We are discussing with consulting companies from Brussels, because practically the discussion within Greece might be different with the discussion in Brussels. So we have to be realistic and to adapt on this discussion. The regulator is working on this and is working on having a coherent regulatory framework for now and for the transition to the new concerns. So practically, we will have all the stakeholders to be in close cooperation in order to be pragmatic and to be pioneers and not followers of the European policy. As I mentioned before, we have ambitions to be active players and not passive players. And this is a clear message to all stakeholders in this. The regulator is clear in this way.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Dagoumas. William, how practical you think is this hydrogen-ready infrastructure, that is to give the message to all concerned that from now on, whatever infrastructure they're planning on gas should be hydrogen-ready? How practical is this to actually implement?
You must have been reading my mind, because I was hoping that was the question you were going to ask me. I think in the area that I'm focusing on, in the Balkans region, it's a stretch to imagine that any infrastructure that they can build within the time frame of the clean energy transition could be ready to be hydrogen capable. And it places a tremendous threat to their energy security by requiring that. I think there are many, many questions about the safety, metallurgy, consumers' willingness to adapt to hydrogen appliances. And by requiring them to be hydrogen ready when the standards haven't been developed, basically means you can't build gas infrastructure in the Balkans, which means within the next 10 years, we're facing a crisis in the Balkans, because we will have eliminated the lignite capacity and not been able to replace it with gas infrastructure through the transition.
Well, thank you very much for pointing this out, because I happen to share your views. And I go back to Mrs. Spyraki, because, for example, we have the FSRU in Alexandroupolis. Now, this is fully completed in terms of the consortium. We have several countries participating. And I understand that last 10 days ago, the go-ahead was given in terms of funding of this project. But if the EU is going to insist of hydrogen ready, as William very rightly pointed out, the standards for adopting such a solution in an FSRU are not ready yet, and it will take some time to develop. So, and at the same time, we have then another LNG-based terminal in Cyprus, which is already being built. It's another FSRU. This is fully bankrolled by EIB because it was approved before. So we already have two important projects in the region, which I don't think, from a practical point of view, can assimilate hydrogen type of standards. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, allow me to clarify this, but FSRU is including in the current PCI list.
Sorry,
well, if I may, I repeat, yes, FSRU is including in the current PCI list.
Okay.
So we are not talking about the projects that they are included in the current PCI list. We are talking about the project that the new PCI list will include.
The new ones. Okay.
So my first point is this: that we have to clarify, but we have to conclude the existing project with the available instruments we have, the financial instruments we have available, and it is also important to understand that EIB stopped funding gas projects since the first day of 2021. And EIB is leading the lending policy in the EU framework. It's not compulsory, but it's leading the lending policy framework. That's why I'm insisting that we have to focus on the future, and we have to work on the future infrastructure by giving the opportunity to the future infrastructure to become hydrogen ready by retrofitting them, by repurposing them. This is one of the cases that I work on, because I think that now we need maybe some infrastructure for natural gas, especially in Greece. We are lacking of local infrastructure, and Mr. Tsakas has already explained it. But we have to work on infrastructures that they will not become, at the end of the day, standard assets. And in this regard, I think that we have to have the provision for having infrastructure that they could be retrofitting in terms of having hydrogen-ready infrastructure.
Yeah. Of course, we have two problems here. One is standards. I don't think that enough preparation is being undertaken in terms of determining standards. And the second problem, which I think is it looms in everybody's mind, is how certain are we that after 2025-26, for example, the EU will have enough hydrogen producing capacity to flood its grids and its gas system.
That's why, Mr. Stambolis, I have already talked about not the contradiction of the issue of having gas and hydrogen, but for the complementarity of having low carbon hydrogen and green hydrogen. Because I partially agree with your approach that we will not have enough sufficient quantity of green hydrogen in order to provide affordable energy to our industry and to our consumers. Okay. But we have to replace smoothly gas with low carbon hydrogen and green hydrogen. And in this regard, I insist on business cases coming from gas sector in order to transform gas into low carbon hydrogen by using CCS and CCUS technology. And also by having biomethane and other, allow me to say, renewable gases in the pipeline.
Okay. I think you're very clear. I think that's your message now is very clear. So, unless there are any questions, I'd like to conclude this first session. We're already late because of the technical problem, which I understand is worldwide. We had a hacking from the well-known porters. We know where from it came, and was anticipated, but we didn't appreciate it was going to be so worldwide. So you see, if you catch hackers red-handed, this is what happens. They reciprocate. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Very, very warm participation. We shared, I think we had a good discussion, a lot of messages, important messages, and we'll try and codify them, include them in the final communique of this webinar. So thank you again, and we now move to the next.
Good afternoon from Strasbourg. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay.